Welcome back to Living in the Pacific Northwest with Hal Byrd. Today we're going to be talking about one of the hottest, most polarizing topics on the Oregon-Washington border, living in Portland, Oregon versus Vancouver, Washington. So if that's something you're interested in, stay tuned. Hi, my name is Hal Byrd, and I'm a licensed real estate broker in the Pacific Northwest. And a few short years ago, my husband and I made a life-changing decision to relocate here. But not knowing anyone here at the time, we ran into all sorts of roadblocks and challenges and obstacles. So we decided to make a resource to help other people considering a move here and share our experience of what it's like to live, work, and play in the greater Pacific Northwest and specifically Southwest Washington. This channel is geared towards being that friend for you in the Pacific Northwest we wish we had as we did our homework about relocating. So if that's something you're interested in, stay tuned. And if you have any real estate needs at all, whether you're looking to buy, sell, or invest in the Pacific Northwest, make sure to shoot me a text at 360-818-4438. So let's jump in. When you're looking to relocate, even if you're doing a local relocation from one city like Portland, Oregon to Vancouver or Vancouver to Portland, there are 100 things to consider when it comes to moving. There's 100 different metrics that you can look at. Like, is my favorite grocery store nearby, to what are the schools like? But today I want to talk about the 5 most common questions that I get when it comes to evaluating Portland, Oregon versus Vancouver, Washington. And these were actually some of the things that my husband and I considered as we were looking to relocate, which was just 4 short years ago. Time flies. So if you're looking to relocate, I've definitely been in your shoes. So I first want to give a little background on Portland, Oregon, and Vancouver, Washington. And I promise you I won't say Portland, Oregon, and Vancouver, Washington every 5 seconds in this video. So if that phrase is already annoying you, don't worry, you won't hear much more of it. Although the two cities are a stone's throw away from each other, and if you're standing on the most southern part of Vancouver, you can see Portland and vice versa. They could not be more worlds apart. They're so different in real estate, in taxes, in kind of culture, and then just the vibe overall. Living in Vancouver is totally different than living in Portland. And today we're going to talk about some of the things you might want to look at as you're evaluating the two cities. So we're going to talk about some of the top financial considerations when it comes to deciding which state you want to live in. I want to start by letting you know about the relative size of the two cities. So Vancouver's population is about 191,000 people as of the 2020 census, and Portland is 625,000 people. That's just the city of Portland. In all of Clark County, which is the county that Vancouver is located in, there are less than 500,000 people. So that kind of gives you an idea of what the population difference is. Vancouver being 191 and Portland being 652. So then when you look at the land size, Portland takes up about 145 square miles, whereas Vancouver is about 52 square miles. And that's only talking about Vancouver proper. If you look at greater Southwest Washington, which includes basically to the very south, Vancouver, Camas, and Washougal, and then on the north side you have Battleground and Ridgefield and all of the unincorporated areas in between, Southwest Washington is about the same size as 156 square miles compared to Portland's 145. So they're very close in size, but they couldn't be more different. Just in a population standpoint, you can see that Vancouver is a lot less densely populated than Portland. But if you want a walkable area, or you want to be in this vibrant feel of a city where you can walk to yoga and walk to a coffee shop and walk to your grocery store and bike everywhere, then Portland definitely has advantage here. But if you like more suburban, spread out, a little bit more elbow room, not such high density, then I think you'll find that Southwest Washington is going to be a better fit for you. So even given those facts, Vancouver is actually increasing in population while Portland has a negative net migration right now. So there's a lot more opportunity for growth in Vancouver because Portland is already a huge nationwide metropolitan area where most people, if you tell them that you're thinking about moving to Vancouver, they think you're talking about Canada. So even though Vancouver, Washington, it was the first Vancouver, just want to throw that in. So that gives you an idea about size and the reason why they're so comparable. I find that more people come to me looking at Vancouver versus Portland rather than Seattle versus Portland because of the proximity geographically between the two. And I think both options, Portland and Vancouver, are better options than Seattle, partially because, I mean, it depends on what's important to you, but with lower real estate prices, access to pretty much anything that you would want to do in and around Seattle, but you have access to those tax advantages, which we're going to talk about, and you're much closer to an airport. So while Seattle's a beautiful city, I definitely think we've got it going on in Southwest Washington and the Portland metro area. Number one, and probably the thing I get asked about the most, is income tax. Oregon has some of the highest income taxes in the country. They're ranked as, depends on where you look, anywhere from number 1 to number 5 in terms of the highest taxes, whereas Washington, you can't get less than 0. I guess negative taxation, the government would pay you. I don't know if that exists anywhere. Negative taxation. So Washington is one of the lowest. There's about, I think, 7 states that have no income tax. We'll verify that. So let's say that your combined household income is $200,000. Oregon income tax ranges from 4.75% up to 9.9%, and it has a marginal tax rate just like federal taxes. The thing I personally am not the biggest fan of when it comes to Oregon taxes is the income brackets that they chose to graduate to the different levels. If you are married filing jointly, your first $7,300 is taxed at a rate of 4.75%. Then beyond that, up to $18,400, that gets taxed at a rate of 6.75%. Then anything you're making over $18,000, which is most people, gets taxed at 8.45% up to $250,000. And if you earn over $250,000, every dollar over that is taxed at 9.9%. And this is on top, of course, of our federal income taxes. So if you are a married couple filing jointly and you make $200,000, you will owe $16,441 to the state of Oregon on top of your federal income taxes. Now, conversely, if you take that same household and move them into Vancouver, Washington, their state income tax liability is $0. It's crazy. So that's a potential $16,000 savings by living in Washington state. Also, if you live in Multnomah County and you make $125,000 or more if you are a single individual, or more than $200,000 if you are a married couple, you have an additional 1.5% tax on all income over $125,000 or $200,000 respectively. That brings us to number 2, because most people, when they hear that Washington state doesn't have income tax, their initial thought is, well, they must have really high property taxes, because how else is the state funding themselves? And that's really not the case. Oregon and Washington have very similar property tax rates. Clark County comes out to about $13.73 per $1,000 of assessed value, and Multnomah County comes out to about $19.07 per $1,000 of assessed value. And what that actually equals out to in terms of percentage-wise is about 1.02% in Clark County and 1.04% in Oregon. So relatively low property taxes compared to somewhere like Texas, where you don't have income tax, but your property taxes are 3% plus. So on a $500,000 house in Clark County, you can expect to pay about $5,100 in taxes, and in Multnomah County, about $5,200 in taxes. So our property taxes are very equal. I would definitely say this is a category that is a wash when comparing the two areas financially. Number 3, let's talk about the housing market. This is a very interesting time to be talking about prices. Today we are filming in April 2022, and even if you're watching this in the future, you probably know that interest rates went up dramatically in the past month or two. Now keep in mind, unless these are cash sales, they typically would have gone under contract about a month ago, 3 weeks to a month ago. sometimes more. So the pricing that you're seeing closed today is actually reflective of typically about 30 days ago. The average price in Vancouver, and the parameters to look at are, this is Vancouver City or addresses, some unincorporated areas that have Vancouver addresses, and we're looking at detached or single family homes. So the average price in Vancouver was $563,000, while the median price was $525,000. And an interesting note, because we've been in such a hot seller's market, most homes are selling over asking price. So in Vancouver, Washington, this month, homes are selling at about 4.3% over the asking price. If you're looking at a home that's listed at $500,000, it's probably gonna go for $521,000 or more, depending on how popular and sought after the house is. Now let's look at Portland. The average price point in Portland was $692,000, which is about $130,000 more expensive than Vancouver on average. Median price was $580,000, which is $55,000 more expensive on the median. Now the interesting thing when we're looking at list to sale price, or the percentage that a house is going over asking for in Portland, they're actually going on average for about 7.8 over asking, which on a $500,000 house would be $39,000 over asking. So you can expect a list price of $500,000 to go for $539,000 in Portland. Not only do we have higher prices in Portland, but it's also more competitive, as indicated by the percentage that houses are going over list price there. So the takeaway here is that if you're shopping in Vancouver, you're typically going to get more bang for your buck. But obviously in Portland, going back to the walkability and some of the access, you're going to be right in the city and have access to city-like amenities. And that brings us to number 4, which is the job market. By and large, it's safe to say that Portland definitely has the larger employers, but with the increase in work from home and remote work that the pandemic brought on, I'm finding that people have a lot more flexibility to where they can live and work. So some of the most prominent and largest employers in the Portland metro area, not including Southwest Washington, are going to be Nike, Intel, US Bank, Wells Fargo, Columbia Sportswear, Adidas, Daimler Trucks. There are probably more jobs, obviously, as indicated by the fact that Portland has more than 3 times the population of Vancouver. There are a lot more jobs available in Portland. Now, some of the largest Vancouver employers are places like Banfield Pet Hospital, Fisher Investments, Fred Meyer, Clark College, HP, and Wafer Tech. And I just want to insert this quick note because this also comes up a lot. If you live in Washington and work in Oregon, you will pay Oregon income taxes, unless you work remote. You can work for an Oregon company or a California company, and because you are working in Washington and that's where you're earning your income, then you're not subject to income taxes. Conversely, if you live in Oregon and work in Washington, you will still pay Oregon income taxes. So if you live or work in Oregon, you're going to pay income taxes no matter where you live. The only way to take advantage of the no state income tax in Washington is to both live and work in Washington. But please consult your tax professional. I am not a tax professional. I'm not giving any financial or tax advice. I'm just providing you with some information, but please verify yourself. And finally, we're at number 5, which is vibe/lifestyle. If you've been watching my videos for some time, you've probably heard my husband talk about the comparison that he sees vibe-wise between Vancouver and Portland, which is that Vancouver is the straight A student, straight-laced, good boy, good girl kind of vibe. And Portland is a little bit more of the wild child if they were siblings. Very free-spirited. The whole culture of Keep Portland Weird is very present. I would say in general, the Pacific Northwest has a very do-you lifestyle and culture. So if you always have felt like you don't quite fit in somewhere, I find that Portland is a great place if you are a bit of a misfit or never feel like you kind of found your place in life in terms of the location that feels like home. I think Portland is that for a lot of people. And so you have people from all over the world and all over the country that move here. And I was on a Zoom with a client. We were meeting with a new construction builder and talking about some of the homes, and the builder's rep asked, well, why do you want to move to the Pacific Northwest? And he said, well, because it's the Pacific Northwest. And it's so funny because that kind of sums it up in terms of there's not really anywhere else in the US that is like this. And I mean, you could say the same for Southern California, and you could say the same for the Bay Area and for Texas and Florida and New England. Like, our country is so diverse. And if you haven't quite found what you're looking for, I encourage you to look in the Pacific Northwest. Whether it's Portland, Vancouver, or all the way up in Seattle or Bellingham or down in Eugene, Salem, Ashland, like there's so many great places in the Pacific Northwest. So continuing on the vibes and lifestyle, I personally feel that when I cross the bridge going from Portland into Vancouver, it feels like the pace of life just slowed down. Everything seems more simple, more laid back, calmer. It doesn't feel like this high energy vibe. It feels like a relaxing, peaceful, and calm place to me and to some of my neighbors. And would you agree? You would agree. But we love going into Portland. We love the city vibe and the vibrance that it has. And the other night we drove in. Here's a little hack. If you live in Vancouver and you need to go into Portland, go in after rush hour, like at 7 o'clock. REI doesn't close till 9 o'clock. So we had to make a return at REI. And so we were just driving around downtown. It was dusk. And we went to Northwest 23rd, which is where Nob Hill is, which is my favorite part of downtown Portland. Very San Francisco vibes. And we're driving through and you just see all these people on the street, and people are eating ice cream cones from Salt and Straw, and you see people eating Italian food and Mexican and Thai food, and there's all these different restaurants there and different bars, and every different place on that street has its own vibe, and it's totally different. And you know, that is something that is unique to Portland. So if that's what you're looking for, Portland is a great place to be. If you're looking for, I don't mind driving to those places, but when I come home, I want it to be super quiet and peaceful. You know, Vancouver might be a better option. It just depends on, you know, where you're at in life and what you're looking for. There's no one right answer. We share a lot about Southwest Washington because it was a really good fit for us and our lifestyle, but Portland has some great areas that are definitely worth looking at. In Vancouver, you're not gonna find as much walkability, and I find that a lot of my clients have a difficult time balancing possibly the schools that they want their kids to be in versus walkability. There are ways to get both, certainly, but I find that sometimes my clients have to make a trade-off between the schools that they like and how walkable that area is, because I find a lot of my clients like particular schools in the area or want their children to be in particular schools, whether that's a Montessori school or a private school or certain public schools. Those areas can be a little bit more suburban than, say, downtown Vancouver, which is super walkable. If you're gonna live on, let's say, the east side of town, your walkability is gonna be more like walkable to a strip mall versus downtown Vancouver, which has different shops and restaurants and all sorts of attractions pretty much on every street that you can walk on in downtown. So different things to weigh depending on your needs and wants and what your lifestyle is. So whether you end up in Portland, Oregon or Vancouver, Washington, please reach out to me. I'd love to help you make the decision on which would be right for you, which neighborhoods in Portland and Vancouver or greater Southwest Washington would work for you. So please shoot me a text. I'm here to help you, whether you're looking to buy, sell, or invest in the Pacific Northwest. With that said, I'm Hal Byrd, licensed realtor in the Pacific Northwest, and here to help you with your relocation needs. Ciao for now. Do you guys hear the birds chirping?
Yes, it's me.
Are you a bird
It's
chirping?
the bird.
Oh, spring is delightful. They're so talkative. Okay.